Welcome back to Marvelous Gamers. I'm Rylan, and this is The Rise and Fall of the Darkness, future of the franchise. We don't often come across video games based on a comic book, but when The Darkness was released in 2007, well, it was well worth the effort of the developers. The game was published by 2K Games for Xbox 360 as well as PlayStation 3, and was developed by Starbreeze Studios. The character, the Darkness, first appeared in Witchblade in 1996, and this entity is more like a formless force of chaos. Its host gets limitless demonic powers and can have access to an otherworldly dimension. The game featured this mysterious entity with an exciting mafia-based storyline. The Darkness was quite an intriguing first-person shooter video game, but it certainly was not for everyone. Some aspects of the gameplay, such as killing people in most gruesome ways, or ripping them to shreds with tendrils, were not everybody's cup of tea. It was actually banned in countries like Singapore, due to the excessive violence and religiously offensive expletives. However, the game was still quite interesting, and there were some innovative concepts. For instance, you could create black holes, and try out things that weren't actually seen in video games back then. The gorehounds loved the action in this game, but with time, the franchise unfortunately fell to an untimely demise. So, in this video, we will explore the two games in the series, along with their brilliance and their drawbacks. We will also get into the various reasons behind the downfall of such a game that had so much potential to continue. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Now, let's begin. The Darkness. You play this game as Jackie Estacado, and the storyline is revealed through his narration. It all starts off on his 21st birthday, when an assassination attempt on him fails. The man behind the sinister plot is his uncle Paulie, an underworld boss who is simply paranoid that his nephew would take over his position. The Darkness, an ancient demonic force, has inhabited Jackie's bloodline for several generations, and as night falls, it manifests itself into him. The attackers are then slaughtered, and Jackie now has to deal with his new powers. He ruins his uncle's drug business and money laundering operations using his special powers. But Paulie is not the one to sit quietly. He bombs an orphanage where Jackie grew up, and a corrupt police captain named Eddie helps Paulie kidnap Jackie's girlfriend, Jenny. They keep her imprisoned in the orphanage to draw Jackie in, and when Jackie reaches there in search of his girlfriend, the Darkness torments him with painful memories. He is forced to watch as his girlfriend is killed by Paulie, and he helplessly watches them flee after the crime. After the trauma, Jackie commits suicide, but he wakes up in the other world. This is a hellish world controlled by the Darkness, and it looks like the trenches used in World War I. In this hellish place, he meets his great-great-grandfather, who explains how he brought the Darkness into the family.
I brought this darkness into our family. This is all my fault.
The only way that Jackie can get rid of the curse is by invading the innermost castle in the underworld and facing the Darkness head-on. Jackie plans meticulously to get his revenge and kills Eddie and his men in an explosion. At this time, he goes back to the otherworld and, with the help of his great-great-grandfather, attacks the castle. Before the latter can tell Jackie how to free himself from the Darkness, his spirit is pulled away. However, Jackie allows himself to be consumed by the powers of the Darkness. With every murder, the Darkness has more control over him, and he finally kills Paulie in his hideout. By now, the body count has gone so high that the Darkness revels in this murderous spree. The game ends on quite an emotional note, as Jackie is in a dream where he lies in Jenny's arms. They have been allowed a few minutes to be together for the final time, and when Jackie wakes up, the screen fades to black.
Let's go! Got it!
Yours is the power of darkness.
What we felt about the game. This is easily one of the best comic-based video games that you can ever come across. One of the first things that you will notice about this game is the incredibly stylized visual aspect of the gameplay. The narrative starts off in New York City, and they portray a gloomy and dark landscape with mysterious alleys and dimly lit streets. The use of light and shadow is simply brilliant, and the dark visuals also sync with the story perfectly. The character of Jackie is genuinely an interesting guy, who is a wise fellow from a crime family. His deals with the darkness are also full of dilemmas, because there is a heavy price to pay in return for all the powers that he will gain. The beautifully crafted story will make you feel like you're watching a well-written horror flick, and the dialogues and cutscenes only add to the ambiance. The game wouldn't have been the same without the terrific voice acting, and there's some emotionally powerful sequences that will leave you with a heavy heart. The action scenes are well balanced, and the game moves ahead quite smoothly. It does get somewhat gory, but you would know that the game is not about the gimmicks. The levels are enormous in size, and you have to do everything from finding collectible items, performing small quests, and even speaking to certain characters. The strategic importance is paramount, mainly because the powers of the darkness work in the dark.
Exquisite meat.
Thus, you must black out an area by shooting at the street lamps before you can even go into a battle. One of our favorite moments in the game was when demons could be summoned, and they would suck people up through a black hole or impale the bad guys. At times, you might feel a bit too powerful with all the tentacles sticking out of your back, but the supremacy is short-lived if you're not too careful. Before you know it, you'll be gunned down. The game interacts with you quite a bit, and this dark and action-packed game is a must-try if you want a beautiful story with top-notch graphics and a neat package. The Darkness 2. This game begins with the premise that Jackie now leads the Franchetti family, and he has learned to control the darkness. However, he is often haunted by the memories of his dead girlfriend, Jenny. He and his crew are attacked by a rival gang in a restaurant, and this causes him to restore his powers using the darkness. He is helped by a darkling, and goes after his attackers into the subway. Suddenly, he gets hit by a train after being shocked by a vision of Jenny. When he reawakens with his men, he straight away goes after the gang that attacked him. After some investigation, they trace the attack to a crime boss named Swifty. Although he is subdued, he reveals that the attack was actually planned by a shady group that simply paid him to do the job.
I think they're like some kind of secret club or something, you know? They gave me an envelope with a whole load of cash.
Jackie soon learns about the secret society that ordered the hit. They are a group of armed cultists who want to use the power of the darkness for themselves. The darkness was known to have only one weakness: bright light. They use blinding lights to ambush Jackie and catch him unaware. He is knocked out, and when he wakes up, he finds out that he's been crucified. A device is also attached to him, and it is draining him of his dark powers. A man named Victor offers him a fair deal and promises to spare the lives of his family if he willingly parts with his powers.
Will you give me the darkness of your own free will?
Why don't you try and take it if you're such a fucking genius?
When he refuses, he loses consciousness yet again, and later, he wakes up in hell, where the darkness keeps Jenny's soul. Jackie breaks free, but his Aunt Sarah is murdered by one of the members of the Brotherhood. After a mirage of complex events, Jackie's powers are drained from him by Victor, but he retains a small portion of it. He goes after Victor, and even manages to kill him. He then regains the darkness, after which killing himself to join Jenny in hell. However, he simply wakes up in a psychiatric ward, and everyone tries to convince him that it was all an illusion. The Darkling sacrifices himself to help him escape. At this point, you can choose which storyline to follow. You can stay with Jenny in the ward, or you can reject the asylum and try to reach hell. In the latter choice, Jackie rescues Jenny from her bindings in hell, but he himself remains trapped there. Our reviews for this game. Paul Jenkins, the man who wrote the script for the first game, returns for the sequel. However, Starbreeze Studios, the earlier developer, is now replaced by Digital Extremes. The game was released for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Microsoft Windows, and the reviews for the game were mostly positive. We must spare a special word for the story that keeps getting better. It is a compact tale of how Jackie's life changes with the powers of the darkness, and the endings are just how they should have been. Besides the usual gameplay, there's now a new Vendetta mode, which is kind of like a side campaign. Here, you get to play as one of the new characters, and they all have their personal weaponry and power sets. This game is so much more than just mindless shooting and action sequences, and there are some major changes made to the narrative. This game does not rely as much on stealth as the first game did. It is actually more about taking down bad guys in more gruesome ways. The Darklings aren't used as much as before, but you can have a constant Darkling, who is quite a fun character. The graphics continue to impress, and we loved the unabashed fun spirit of the game. We just have one major complaint with the game. Just as things start going from the good to the excellent, it's all over. It barely has 5 or 6 hours of gameplay, and this is certainly way too short for the gaming fans. If only it was longer, well, the popularity of the game could have been a whole different story. Nevertheless, we believe that this game performed way worse than its potential. That said, it is quite an exciting follow-up, and deserves a chance from those who loved the first Darkness game.
We're waiting for you.
Hellgate, huh? Thanks for the help, asshole.
Fall of the franchise. The Darkness 2 ends in a way that promises more to come in the future. Jackie is essentially left with the darkness in hell, and the story begged continuation. So you would think a third game should have been here by now. Well, tough luck, because things did not go as planned. The Darkness 2 did not exactly please the developers with the sales figures. In fact, 2K revealed that there was no funding for the Darkness 2 DLC. The startling fall in the commercial success meant that the future plans were kept on hold. 2K is focused and dedicated to making Borderlands 2 a success, and they probably wouldn't have all that time to spare for the franchise at present. You can say that it's quite unfair that one slow seller makes a curtains for the franchise. After all, we have seen several others that went along despite a small hiccup here and there. But it has been almost 9 years since the second game was released, and there's still no good news at all about a third. Future of the Darkness franchise. As of now, nothing promising is heard from the franchise developers. Both the previous developers for the series are currently caught up in various projects. Digital Extremes is exploring various new games, and Starbreeze is working on Payday 3, which is set to release in 2023. If 2K has any plans of bringing back this gem of a franchise, it would have been a new developer this time around. But do they still own the rights to the franchise? Well, even if they don't, Top Cow Productions, the comic series company, might be quite willing to offer them the same, so that shouldn't be a problem. The comic series is set to make a comeback, and a video game might be a step in the right direction for them in terms of popularity. If you look at the track record of 2K, it becomes pretty obvious that they would first remaster the previous games before bringing a third one into the picture. It has been the same with Borderlands or Mafia, and we don't see how it can be any different with the Darkness. It is a tried and tested policy because it tells the company about the craze for the franchise in the market. So there is nothing in the immediate future. So the fans might have to wait a lot longer to get their desired Darkness 3. However, it's not a lost cause because the comic book is now returning, and it might be a good time to cash in on the nostalgia that the fans might have for the series. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to send a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. For Marvelous Gamers, I'm Rylan. Have a good one, and be safe.